to a special edition of the Royal Ocean Racing Club Time Over Distance series with Louis Habib talking to Alex Thomson just days before the start of the 2020 Vendée Globe. The Vendée Globe is a simple yacht race, but incredibly tough to complete, let alone win. In 8 editions, 138 entries have started the race, but only 71 have finished. Non-stop, around the world, solo, unassisted, 28,000 miles will be on the log of the winning boat. The 9th edition boasts 33 skippers, the largest in the history of the race. 19 boats are foiling, 13 built in the last 5 years. Arguably, this is the most competitive race ever. This is Alex's 5th Vendée Globe, and having come second last time, HUGO BOSS is one of the favourites. Alex, many thanks for taking the time to talk to the Royal Ocean Racing Club just a few days before the start of the 2020 Vendée Globe. Alex, you've been a member of the RORC for 20 years. What was your first big RORC race?
I did a campaign in 1995 for the Fastnet. It was my first one, my first proper offshore race. I was a nipper working for Britannia Sailing. I had my skipper was a chap called Kevin Townsend, who was fantastic. My first fantastic mentor. I've had a few. Kevin was amazing. I don't think we finished particularly high, but I think it was at the Fastnet where I realised how much I love ocean racing.
Okay, wow. So it all started for you. That I have to say an addiction. To what you're doing now. It's got to be. This is your 5th race. You've got to be called a warrior of the Vendée Globe, and you've got a weapon for a boat. You really have a shot at winning this, don't you?
Oh, I'd like to think so. I mean, that was what the aim was. But, I thought I've had a crack at winning almost all of them, to be honest. Even the first one in 2004, I was probably naive to think that then. But certainly we arrived at Les Sables in 2008 with a package that could win. 2012, was probably a podium package. 2016 was definitely a possible winning package. And, 100% this time is a winning package, or could be a winning package.
And I've got to say, I'm watching the big storms tracking across the Atlantic right now, and it's blowing dogs off chains in the UK. It just brings it home to me how menacing this race is.
Yeah, it definitely is, for sure. And obviously most people would imagine they're probably right that down in the Southern Ocean, it's that's what it's like. But I can tell you on a couple of occasions in this race, the hardest conditions have been either the start or the finish few days. So the North Atlantic is a really tough place to start and finish it.
Mm. Okay, Alex, I'm going to run you through some questions that the RORC put together as well as me. And the first is the IMOCA 60 HUGO BOSS. It's always been a bold design. Do you set out to do something different in every cycle? To step away from what the others are doing?
I wouldn't say we're trying to do something different every time, but we're not in the same place as everybody else. So, I think when you've got teams, and we saw it in the America's Cup in Bermuda, that when you've got teams all based in one place and sailing together, that one person might be a bit faster than the other, and so they all kind of converge together, and so you probably end up with similar thinking. So whereas for us we're a bit further apart, but this time I think when you have different ideas, it's quite hard to to follow through with them. It's a big gamble. It doesn't work. You could ruin your campaign. You might feel a bit stupid. And but now we're 20 years into this. We got this amazing group of people that we work with, and last time we had arguably the best package, and so we're starting from the best base point, and I think this time I really felt confident that we knew what we were talking about, and so and it was great. I have to say, to work with VPLP. I think they're one of the few firms that will take proper feedback from the sailors, and incorporate that into how they're going to work. And there's some stuff that obviously that they would know that we didn't, but there was a lot of stuff there where we said we think and we feel this, and their initial thought was that's not how we see it, but let's look into it. And then when they went and looked into it, they came back and said, wow, yeah, you're not far away. Yeah. So I think that interaction this time around with VPLP was very strong, got a great relationship, and so that gave us the confidence to give the right feedback, for them to be able to listen and be open to it, and then to be able to drive forwards with something else. I mean, I really feel like we've made a big step forwards this time.
Alex, we could talk for hours and hours, but we haven't got the time. I'm just going to focus in on the enclosed cockpit, and one area which slightly baffles me is weight on these boats is absolutely crucial, and the enclosed cockpit needs more structure. How did you cope with that additional weight to build the enclosed cockpit?
Well, we could spend hours talking about it, mate, but we definitely need a few beers to do that. We've done that a few times before. It's actually the opposite, Louis. So the central cockpit saves an enormous amount of weight, and one of the objectives of this boat is to double use everything. To basically everything had to have two uses, and that's how you get the weight down. So the cockpit, the two sides of the cockpit are the structure for the keel. So essentially the cockpit's for free.
Wow.
And another big part of doing the central cockpit was that the way the stability rules work is that we've got to meet a static righting moment. We have to reach an AVS worst case. And then the last test is the upside down test, the 180. And it's very easy in IMOCA to get stuck up against all of those, and it's really difficult for the boats then to stay competitive. By enclosing the cockpit and having a cabin roof further back, there's no 180 problem for us. So there's a huge advantage in weight to be able to push down this road. That's not how we started that. How we started this conversation was because that's where I thought the cockpit should be. You got better visibility for the sails. You're in the middle of the boat, so it moves less. Your winches and all your ropes around the keel. Again, it's good to stop the pitching up and down. So there's a massive amount of benefits for it, and weight is certainly one of them.
But the motion on these boats is horrendous, enclosed cockpit or not. I mean, you're doing over 30 knots. Is that exaggerated by being in an enclosed space?
Well, it depends how you look at it, mate. On the last boat, people say, they say, well, how do you live on the Vendée? And I said, well, I live in a cave. We got a huge cover that came across on the last boat, and then we had an enclosure to close the back of it. We called that the Vendée house. So most of the time you couldn't see anything anyway. So to me, there is no difference.
And what about your sailing perspective, being inside? In terms of wind and weather changes, how's that affected?
I mean, the boats are now, we sail this boat by the numbers. We've got 350 sensors on this boat, and so it's definitely more numbers driven than it's ever been. And we were very conscious that we didn't want to lose that, that feeling, that connection to the outside of the boat, and, as you say, miss something with the weather or whatever. And that's one of the projects we worked on with Nokia Bell Labs, was to try to, augment that feeling, and we've done that through, I think we've got 9 cameras on board the boat. We've got video, we've got thermal, we've got infrared. So it was definitely a big thought. We've made some small modifications to improve that. We got some bigger windows than we had when we started, and we've got some more impressive cameras from Fleur, which are pretty amazing bits of kit. So yeah, I think we've solved that, and the more I sail it, the less of an issue that's going to be. I can tell you, after the last one day, we went in a refit, and then we went off wherever we went to, and I was lying in the bunk. The guys were on watch, and I suddenly felt something, and I shouted out. I said, "Guys, there's a bit of weed on the rudder." and one of them popped their head down and said, "Excuse me." I said, "There's a bit of weed on the rudder," and he looked at me like, what, are you, a psychic? And he went over the back of the boat, and there was a bit of weed there. So you when you spend as much time on the boat, in the Vendée as you do, you build a real connection, a real understanding, and that's, I think, why you end this emotional attachment with the boats.
Yeah. Extremely descriptive there, Alex. Thank you so much for that. But I think what a lot of people would like to ask you, we've seen these amazing videos of Hugo Boss in training. What's it like on board travelling at that warp speed?
Great fun. These boats are not flying all the time. Obviously, you're kind of a lot of the time bouncing around on the transom. But when the boat suddenly goes quiet, you're fully in the air. It's a great feeling. But on the other side of that, you got to be careful. We design the boats to get to the limit in lots of areas, and the limits for us really are the foil, the hull, the mast, pretty much everything, and that needs to be managed. And it did last time. It's not much different from last time, but it certainly you have to be careful. So there are limits that must be respected. We've got lots of alarms everywhere, and it can be tricky, and again, that was a big part of some of the projects that we worked on. And I think people need to remember that our last boat isn't that different from this one. I think for a lot of the guys, the last generations, it's a bigger step. So we still had that feeling, and that if we're taking a human and then we're taking a machine, and I think one of the things that we wanted to work hard on, and Bell Labs helped us a lot with this, was how do you kind of put those two things together in what we would call kind of perfect synergy. The machine needs to be an extension of the human, and it's it's been fascinating to run down that road, I can tell you.
Alex, over the years, the stats have shown that only about half the boats actually finish the Vendée Globe. You don't have a pit lane, you don't have emergency services standing by, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this are thinking, why are you all doing it? I mean, it's extremely dangerous. Is that part of the challenge for you?
Yeah, I mean, you remember that. I don't think it's dangerous. I don't feel like that. I've done so many miles. It feels to me like I'm walking down the pavement. And when people, if you're driving your car down the street, you're not worrying about a crash that's coming, or so for me, I don't feel like it's particularly dangerous. And why do I do it? I do it because the challenge, obviously, it's the challenge has got me a bit. Being competitive 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is the right kind of thing for me. I just there's probably a few days it takes me a while to get into, and then I'm like, I love this. It's great fun, and we get to spend a lot of money building what I would consider to be the world's best toy, and it's all about me. It's about my weight, my philosophy, how I want to sail. And I feel extremely privileged to be able to do something like that. I mean, it almost feels ostentatious.
Yeah. I'm going to take you back there. This is not like driving a car down the street. I mean, you are not going shopping. It's a lot more than that. And finishing safely, making it back to Les Sables d'Olonne, is that its own joy? Is that its own relief, or is winning the only satisfaction?
Winning for me can't be the only satisfaction. It's hard to do, and there can only be one winner. I genuinely believe if you finish the Vendée Globe, it's an amazing achievement. You should never underestimate how hard it is to be able to do that. It's obviously it's hard. Our objective is to win, but the first objective is to finish. My number one mentor, Sir Robin, to finish first. First, you have to finish, Thomson. Understand. In fact, he wrote it on the bulkhead on my first boat, and he's absolutely right, and so that's you have to approach the race with that in mind, and I have done, and I will do.
Yeah. Now, HUGO BOSS, it's one of the last of the new boats to hit the water, and the pandemic has seriously cut down your sailing time and everyone else's. How do you think this has affected your chances? The fact that you're a late boat and the fact that you haven't done as much sailing in it?
Yeah, I don't think we're that far away miles-wise to some of the others, but the biggest hurdle for us was hitting whatever we hit in the Jacques Vabre, which damaged the keel, or ripped the keel out of the boat, and Neil and I had to cut it away, and then learn how to sail an IMOCA 60 without a keel down 800 miles down to Cape Verde. So that was quite interesting, and it was a terrible experience, obviously, for that. The deceleration that we experienced was just under 3G. So yeah, I'd say that bit was dangerous, for sure. There are positives from that, Louis. Sorry to go off to a tangent, but the positives, we learned a lot about structure. We learned a lot about keel, ISO rules, and there's learnings that we've made that will make the future of ocean racing boats safer. So there's always a positive. There's a silver lining in every cloud, shall we say. And then obviously we got the boat repaired. We got her in the water the day before lockdown. So that was tough to take. I think we were worried that the French guys would be able to sail and we wouldn't, and they were very worried that we would be able to sail and they wouldn't. And actually what happened was none of us could sail. Everybody's priorities were the people and the teams, which is right. So yeah, we all lost a lot of miles. Impact wise, you know what? 4 years ago, in 2015, we had Guillermo out there in the middle of the ocean, and we got rolled upside down by a rogue wave. And so, you know what? We kind of ended up in a similar place to where we ended up 4 years ago. And so you have to prepare the boat in a different way. You have to know, we got 20,000 miles on the clock now. We had 20,000 miles on the clock in the last before the last one day, and we wanted 30. So it just meant you have to change your approach. We felt that the boat's performance was really good, and we'd take the low-hanging fruit to improve that. But the focus, since then really has been on reliability. To try and foresee, second guess, to test the areas of the boat that maybe we weren't so sure of. And so I kind of feel in some ways it could be an advantage because we had to prepare in a similar way last time, and every boat's been affected with this.
Yeah, I hear what you say. Alex, moving on to physical, mental well-being, training for that. It's clearly a massive part of the game these days. I saw you said in the last race you slept no more than an hour. How do you manage sleep for this race?
The Vendée sleep management's a lot easier than other races. I think it takes probably me 10 days or so to build a rhythm and get into a decent sleeping program. And so short races like transats, route de Rums, etc. It's really hard to get into that rhythm. One of the things, we'd started working on this again with Nokia Labs before the route de Rums because it's something that I felt needed to be managed properly. And the first part of being able to manage it, Louis, was to understand what's actually happening. Mm-hmm. When you're sleep deprived, so I'll give you an example. On the route de Rums, I think I slept, over the 10 or 11 days, my average 24 hours worth of sleep was 2 hours and 35 minutes. And my average sleep length was just over 30 minutes, which just isn't enough. It's just not enough. But when you're sleep deprived, you can't even remember the last time you slept or how long it was. So the first part, or the first problem to solve, is being able to record sleep without, me having to click any buttons or make any choices, and that's what we've done. And actually, you will be able to go online to our website, and you will be able to see live every hour over a 24-hour period how much I am sleeping. So it's going to be fascinating to see what actually happens.
Oh, right, okay. And that's through the hub at Alex Thomson Racing, yeah?
Yeah, we wanted to, that I think we decided this quite early on. Actually, we went after the first lockdown, and we kind of foresaw what was going to happen, and we felt, that we were obliged to, provide a bit more entertainment. Our sport, I love it. I genuinely believe, a race like the Vendée Globe has so many strings to its bow. It can reach people in a way that other sports just can't. I genuinely believe if it's promoted in the right way, it could be one of the biggest sporting properties in the world. And part of our job is we got to bring the people into the boat. We've got to bring the audience in. Once the bandwidths are improving, soon I'm sure you'll be able to log on and go, well, let's have a look at camera number 1 live. That's going to happen. And I think it is an amazing, it's, for the sport of sailing, single-handed and double-handed sailing can reach people in a different way that the Olympics can't, that other parts can't, and it transcends the sport. We reach audiences they don't even know anything about sailing. I was talking to my mate, who he knows what I do, and obviously, and he follows during the race. He does the virtual regatta, and he was telling me that he's got a guy in his office, never been on a boat in his life, but he gets into doing the virtual regatta. They've got a bottle of champagne on it, so he wins between the two of them. And it's just a great example of somebody, that gets a touch of sailing that they wouldn't normally get.
Yeah. I totally get what you're saying now, and getting people on board the boat to see what's going on is an incredible way to put the race to a bigger audience. But you're on your own. I'm sort of turning this round my way here. The Vendée, it's a race of isolation, and you've told me in the past you don't actually like being on your own. How do you prepare for that isolation, Alex?
Yeah. That was probably a long time ago I told you that. I actually have grown to really enjoy it. But it depends on how you look at it, and that's a part of the mental preparation, which in some ways I think is more important now than the physical. How do you view the race, and how do you deal with these kind of mental things? I mean, the first time I went in 2004, it was such a daunting prospect. I'm going to go out and spend 90 days on my own. How do you deal with that? But I work with a sports psychologist, a chap called Ken Way. He was the sports psychologist for Leicester City when they won the Premier League. And I've known him since I was a late teenager. I trust him implicitly, and I give him the challenges. You have to be very honest about it, and then he works out techniques of how to deal with it. But simple things. I look at the race. 3 months is 3 months a long time. Louis, what did you do in the last 3 months? How much can you actually remember? The reality is 3 months is not a long time, and it's gone. It's gone like that, eh? So that's one way of looking at it. Isolation, loneliness. I separate the two. I don't feel like I can feel lonely. I've got a great support network, wonderful family, great friends, and someone can be lonely in a large group of people, but I can feel isolated. That's all right. But just separating simple things, separate those two things apart. Mentally, it's easier to deal with. Ken, another thing is, how do you remain positive and happy? And Ken's explained to me the scientific data around the physical act of smiling, the endorphins, the dopamine it releases, all these little tiny details, just looking at things the other way, remaining positive. The most extreme example of a mental technique I have is that, as you know, I'm an emotional person, my heart's on my sleeve, and and everything for me is about the performance. If I'm performing to my expectations, I'm happy. And if I'm not happy. And when I'm not happy, then the discipline goes out the window. I'll eat less, I'll sleep less, I work harder.
And tell me, do you have a chat with the wife and kids when you're out there? Do you still?
Yeah, I chat with my wife and kids, a few friends I speak to, but I'm not allowed to speak to, for instance, my sports psychologist or anything. No, that can't be done. But I was just going on to say, for me, it's worse when I'm doing really well, almost, because I have a tendency, or I can be, complacent, and there is no place for complacency in what I do, none at all. At that point, it does become dangerous. So what Ken worked out this technique where we managed to recreate that feeling, that aura of invincibility, And then we related it to a near car crash. You know, that feeling when you're driving down the road, someone pulls out, and you slam your foot on the brakes, and that adrenaline goes in your body. You feel a bit sicky in your tummy, your hair stand up on you. So by relating those two things together, whenever I get that feeling of invincibility, then the adrenaline immediately comes in without thinking about it, and I don't have the complacency issue. So I genuinely believe we can do more as humans on the mental side. It's certainly now being explored, but I feel sometimes we're pioneering some of these things, and there's a huge advantage, Louis. Huge advantage.
Yeah, that sort of answers what I was going to ask you next, which is, it's all well and good having all these amazing systems on the boat, being well prepared and everything else, but how do you approach the issues when the muck hits the fan? And you've answered part of that there in terms of how you've been working with the sports psychologist to separate the good from the bad, as it were, and get that adrenaline to kick in when you're getting complacent. That's going to cut down the number of mistakes. It's not going to stop that cell from ripping, though, Alex. It's not going to stop that electronic component from failing. How do you cope with the stress when the muck hits the fan?
Yeah, well, and generally when the stuff goes down, and it happens a lot, and you have to expect it. Let's expect the unexpected; it will happen. Generally the first part is, I might say a few bad words, as you can imagine, stomp around the boat a little bit.
But that gets your adrenaline up, doesn't it? That gives you the energy to sort it out, or some of it.
I don't know, maybe it's, but I don't know. I just then crack on, and then it's down to the team, really. So if I've got a technical problem, I'm allowed to report what that problem is, and then they're allowed to advise me on how to fix that. And that the way they work with me is I get them they assume I know nothing, which I don't know very much, and then they instruct me what to do. And I'm quite good, Louis, at following instructions from people who know what they're doing. And I've done some amazing repairs, over the years. Sometimes I'm not so confident. I remember when my hydro generator ripped off and I didn't have enough fuel to finish the race, so I sailed with no nav lights or anything halfway around the Southern Ocean, and then slowly building, the structure for the hydro generator as I went along. The plan was I'd come around the Horn, get into the Falklands, close to the Falklands, somewhere quite sheltered, and then glue it on the back. And I remember I glued it on the back. I did exactly what I was told. I took the photos, took the video, and I looked at it. I thought, I had to laminate it underwater. So I looked at it. I thought, there's no way that is going to hold. No. So I phoned my boat builder up, and I'm like, mate, I'm really sorry. This is not going to work. There is no way it's going to work. And there was a little second silence, and he was like, it's Clifford Nicholson, an Irish fantastic boat builder. He says, to be sure, Alex, it will. With some real confidence. And he was absolutely right. So I think, if you've got a good team behind you, you've got a good process of how, the instructions come backwards and forwards. You've got to make the choice of what to carry. And we've always carried a lot of spares. We make the assumption that, whatever happens, the race has to be finished. And so, we're probably heavier than other people. But, we consider anything can be fixed. And let's go back and look at Yves Parlier. I'm sorry, I bow to the man. Collecting the pieces of his mast and, sailing to an uninhabited island and then putting it back together and hoisting it and then collecting seaweed and shellfish because he didn't have enough food to finish the race. I mean, I bow to the man. But it tells you anything, is possible.
And that attitude is what you bow to as much as what the man did, and in the modern day, you're putting it into perspective in psychological terms, etc. as well, which is absolutely fascinating. Now, I know people are going to be absolutely glued to the Vendée Globe. We haven't got much other sailing to watch, and it's such an amazing race. And you've got loads of cameras on the boat, haven't you? And you told us about how you're going to be literally getting people on board. You've obviously got media responsibilities, and you've been partnered with HUGO BOSS for 20 years. Does that extra tier of commitment affect your motivation and your stress?
No, I wouldn't say so. No, not at all. We're 17 years in with HUGO BOSS, and we know each other well. We trust each other well. They're an amazing brand. They're quite prepared to do things differently. Be innovative, which fits perfectly with us. And I think they love the content. They love that there's always something happening. They certainly see, and their employees see all the values, the resilience, the challenge, the motivation. There's so many things that can come across into the business world. So they absolutely love it. I enjoy. I think I've really, from the very beginning, when Keith and I started this business in 2003, the actual main objective, Louis, was obviously was to go out and win the Vendée Globe, but the first objective was to create a sustainable business model around ocean racing. And Keith Mills has done more for me than most humans ever would do for someone. He put a lot of money behind to start this whole thing off, and it was so hard at the beginning, Louis. It took us a year to find HUGO BOSS. You'll remember the days I did around the island race with needasponsor.co.uk down the side, and so because it was so hard, when we managed to secure HUGO BOSS, one of the main priorities was to be able to deliver the value. And so I think when you start from that point, that you're privileged to be able to be in that position, and your priority, you've got performance and you've got return. You've got to be able to return, and they got to be equal. And if you think about them differently, it's just never going to work. And that's why we've been with them for that long. But the other side of it as well, again, maybe a way you look at it is, doing what I do with them has allowed me to do the other part, which is be an ambassador for ocean racing. And that's I consider that one of my primary responsibilities, and as I know the club does, and thank you, HUGO BOSS, for allowing us to do that.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm not, I'm only interviewing Alex Thomson here, but we've got to talk about the fact there's 4 RORC members in this race. I mean, how cool is that? The other 3, Sam Davies, Miranda Merrin, and Pip Hare, are all women. How cool is that, Alex?
No, it's great, isn't it? It's great, and obviously we've also got Alexia Barrier in the race as well. But I think there's a lot of things I love about France, and one of them, and particularly in this world in IMOCA, is the women are considered equals, and that's how it should be. And I don't want to belittle either certainly not Pip and certainly not Miranda. I mean, Miranda's an amazing sailor, but from a Samantha Davis point of view, I genuinely believe if you give her a new boat, she could go and win this race. She's super smart, super motivated, very talented. As I said, the others are as well. But that's it's great to see. But that partly is because in France, they genuinely, they're considered equals, and yeah, I think that that's where it needs to go. We should be taking the lead there and running with it.
Yeah. Alex, I can't not ask you this. On behalf of the Royal Ocean Racing Club, you've done a few Fastnets. I know the RORC would love to see HUGO BOSS on the start line for the 2021 Rolex Fastnet race. It's finishing in Cherbourg, and it's going to be the biggest race ever in 2021. Will we see you there?
Well, the Fastnet race is on the IMOCA calendar for sure, and in France, it's renowned, and there's it is the most important British race, 100%. So yeah, I mean, our plan would be, has always been to be there at the fastest rate. I think we've only missed a few, and that's because the boat's not been out of build. For sure, very interesting. The race finishing in Cherbourg, I think that's a very smart move. Myself, I know it's hard for some people to think about the history of the event, and how that works. But these things have to evolve, and I think, well, why not? There's ocean racing's home, to some degree, is in France, and that's where the best people are. It's where there's certainly it's where the big professional campaigns are. I mean, you think about places like Lorient and Port La Forêt. I mean, the economic benefit to the area is, you know, measured in hundreds of millions. So you know, it's I think it's brilliant. You know, I take my hat off to them, and hopefully, you know, we'll be there. I think the race will change, obviously, for sure. It's going to be a longer, maybe VMG run or something, but you know, my boat's pretty well suited to VMG running in the race. So yeah, it certainly could be in my interest to finish a bit further east.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top.
Well, I think there's going to be no crowds. You're probably aware that the whole place is shut down now, so it's going to be very different. So I feel privileged to have done the other ones. You know, like I say, I'm an emotional man. I bawled my eyes out on every single one. In fact, the first one, I remember Keith and I went down the channel, the channel as they call it, here, and there's people everywhere, and they're shouting your name, Alex Thomson and HUGO BOSS. They didn't care, they were British. And Keith and I were both like, you know, there's, you know, tears coming out of our eyes and everything. It's so emotional. And Keith says to me, he said, you know what, Alex? He said, I've been to Olympic Games opening ceremonies. I've been to Champions League Cup finals. He said, I have never experienced something like this. So it's not going to be quite the same, but you know, for me, I'd be happy to have a little bit less emotion. You know, I've been there and done it. I know what to expect, and I'm just looking forward to cracking on with this.